We're back in session. We were on government resources. Mr. Evans.
Mr. Chairman. Government resources has a slight increase in the budget compared to 07, 10%, primarily due to the digitization initiative being requested. You see where that's coming in on the general fund, relatively flat budget on the lion's share of this group's funding, which is DOI self-governance compact. The IHS funds are flat, and HUD funds came into this group in 2007 for the regulatory compliance. Staffing or the salaries is a slight increase, and you can see some numbers that are coming in for head counts, and I'll go over what department those are, which is, well, it's primarily real estate services. On page 141, there's 3 departments in this group. The government resource group itself has only a 2% increase budget to budget, but a 10% increase over 06. Again, it's bringing in the annual performance reviews of the IHP. Is where the increase is on the Nahasda block grant in 07 for $230 million. The Evaluation and Compliance Department of Government Resources has just a slight decrease in its budget to budget comparison, and a $212,000 increase, or 110% increase over 06. And it did staff up in 07. Real Estate Services has a 21% increase in its budget. Again, this is due to the digitization project. The new initiative slightly offset, even though that's a $350,000 initiative, it's offset by a $100,000 decrease in the Tribal Trust land lease application budget. And the same explanation explains why it's increased over 06. Not a lot of departments in this division. You can see that the level 3 report on page 143C, there's not a lot of movement here other than what I just mentioned. The primary change in this budget is that special initiative to digitize the land records. I don't have anything else to add other than what I've already stated on the budget variance.
Any questions or discussions on government resources? If not, we'll move to career services.
Career Services has another division where there's a very minimal movement here, primarily in the Public Law 102-477 employment training grant has a decrease of $1.8 million. You can see it here on the funding chart of the DOI 102. The DOL is obviously, you can see that this particular division, the lion's share of its funding comes from the Department of Labor, and that's the Workforce Investment Act. Flat salaries, actually a slight decrease. No change in staffing headcounts in the budget. The Career Services has three departments: employment training, talk and leave, and adult ed. Adult ed is a pretty small department compared to the other two. The employment and training has, as I mentioned, a $2.5 million decrease in its budget in that 102-477 employment training grant, reflecting a decrease in grant funding of $1.8 million. The Boys and Girls Club budget is not included in this year's proposal, which is also contributing to that decrease. It's an increase over 06 actuals. It's due to $280,000 tribal funded IHP employment and training service, as well as $90,000 increase in federally funded Taro Sum program. There may be a typo in there. No, that's what it's called, Taro Sum. You know what that is?
That's the summary accounting for Taro.
Oh, okay.
There's some activities underneath it.
Okay. Talking Leaves has a decrease in its budget funding, identified in its outreach budget component for '08 funding. Does the outreach activity of Talking Leaves, does it have a separate grant, I guess, grant funding that comes in?
It's separate from the overall operation.
Okay, is there a chance that might get reinstated with another grant app this year for outreach, or it will? Or
It's a contract.
your contract, so we should see his budget coming in too.
Yes, it's a contract.
Thank you. And Adult Ed has a slight decrease compared to the '07 budget, and that decrease is reflective on the Department of Education funded vocational rehab services. It's a 23% increase over '06 actuals, $242,000. And that is in the motor fuel tax funded voc ed of $167,000, as well as a $95,000 increase on the self-governance funded adult ed. The level 3 report on page 148. There is one tribal funded initiative for the Talking Leaves Job Corps computer upgrades on page 148B. Tribal Works and Employment Training Retention are, I'm sorry, on page 148. Mr. Chair, I don't see anything else in here that I haven't already addressed.
Okay. Any questions or discussions before we ask Ms. Kelly to go over the new initiatives? And could we, Diane? We have some new initiatives that we've been asking the group leaders to address.
Okay.
And it looks like you have three: the employment training, retention, the tribal works program, and the computer upgrade for the Job Corps. At the top of page 1 there is the employment training and retention.
I'll have to refer back to this because I'm not really sure which one it is.
Okay.
Which page it is.
Here's the,
I have to know which program manager was assessment. So
employment training.
I don't know which one.
That's one of them.
Okay. Him on the 57, 315, that's the match dollars.
That's only retention. Tribal works and.
I've got it right here again. Okay. We've got it down here. I've just got so many programs, it's hard to keep up with. On the 57315 up at the top, that was a request that we had put in there for retention for the program. We're in the process of developing a one-stop center, which would actually encompass all of the service delivery in one specific area. Right now, we're pretty fragmented. We're in different locations throughout the complex, and we're moving toward, with the help of Todd, to be able to bring all of those into the service delivery, which would be over into the main building. Part of that is 2 intake clerks that would work on the intake accessibility, and then they would also be charged with the follow-up. After a person is actually placed, we do a 30, 6-month, and a yearly follow-up of those clients to see whether or not they were actually retained and whether or not their salary was up. If they came in as an underemployed client, then we look to see whether or not they gained as a result of getting the training or else actually going into the workforce. Also, the tribal work initiative, where we're working with developing the payback system. If we give a scholarship, a vocational scholarship right now, we're not asking those people to come back and actually work for us, although we can make referrals. What we're doing is we're going to have a tribal work person who would actually work with the payback system, so that there would be somebody that would be tracking that. If Harley and Chris came in and went through one of our programs and we sent them to dental assistance training, or we sent them to lab tech, and we were able to help them get a job, then we would actually see if there was jobs that were available through our health facility so that those people could be gainfully employed. And we're working right now very closely with health and some of the other areas to do that. Any other questions?
Any other? Pardon?
Did she recommend that?
They also asked that you rank what you consider to be the most important of those 3 projects: computer upgrade, tribal works, and employment training.
Okay, where's my other one?
The computer upgrade job corps.
Okay, that's on
which
the second page.
Tribal work.
And then there's a third one.
That was page 3, next to the bottom, tribal works.
Okay, the tribal works is the position that I just told you about. That's the one who would actually track the payback. And the intake clerks is the work retention. That's the 57,315.
Right.
And the computers are the computer software systems that we're trying to get for the students at Job Corps. If I'm not mistaken, I think one of the council members had asked about the dormitories and community, the students that are in the dormitories. We have 6 wings over in the dorms, and there is a study room over there, and it has computers in those areas. Those computers are very antiquated, they're very slow. Some of the students have a very difficult time, and this is to upgrade the computers in the dormitories. It's also to upgrade our work keys. One of the things that we're going to is the work keys training and train key, so that all of our students who come in that are going out for placement would actually go through the train keys process, and they would also be certified through the work keys. And in order to do work keys, you have to have your computers up to speed to do that.
Okay.
Did you rank them?
So,
I was just explaining.
right, she was still
three.
explaining that.
If we rank them, I would say the computers first, because that's service-oriented to the students. I would say that the 57,000 would be second, and the 37,000 would be last.
Okay.
I believe you give the services first.
Right. Are there any questions for Diane, or any further discussion on career services? Thank you, Diane.
Nobody has any questions?
Appreciate it.
Good.
Next, we'll move to housing rehab.
He's done, I think. He's done. Become lazy. What's the level? And that's point one. At that part, fill now.
Makes it a lot easier for me.
And I'll put them down, make sure no one else gets it.
Housing rehabilitation. See a decrease here compared to the budget. This group is a relatively new a new group formed. The HUD IHP funding coming into play is the difference from the 06 actuals, and the decrease from the 07 to the 08 is in the minor emergency repair program. The funding source report shows actually we're increasing on our HUD funding. You can see the motor fuel tax. That minor emergency was funded through the motor fuel tax funding source. Salaries are reflecting the growth of funding in the new division. Although the staffing numbers, budget to budget, hasn't changed. I think there was some. I'm not really sure how to explain why the salaries increased 18%, but the head count stayed the same. That was what I was able to glean from the budgets themselves. Being a relatively new group, we can go to page 151C, the detail. HIP is also contributing to this decrease on the self-governance side. Now that, my understanding, we talked about the HIP funding there in the center of the page I think a couple of days ago, and that
08 is not available yet, but we probably do need to make an adjustment for anticipated carryover. Yeah.
Any estimate at this point? If the council would entertain, the program has issued a budget request to include the $979,638 of carryover on the housing improvement program from the Department of Interior, and budgeting that out in predominantly in the contract service account and the supplies account.
Okay. Well, the chair will entertain a motion
So
to...
moved.
Okay. Is there any discussion?
Wait, just a second, they're wanting to take what now?
The HIP
Okay.
does not have a budget in the 08 submission, as you'll notice there. They have a budget here for the grant of $979,638 included in the comprehensive budget. This is self-governance, which we bring in. We don't just report. It gets appropriated. If it was a grant, we could just handle it through a reporting package. But this is rolling up under the self-governance.
Okay. Any further questions or discussion? And all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Motion carried. Okay. And Mr. Baker, you have...
Yes, back to the minor emergency repair, that in 06 actuals, we spent $936,875. We budgeted $1,750,000 in '07, and the request is for $100,000 for '08. Sharon, I think, did she come in?
No, she didn't.
Okay, great. Okay. Working intimately with the program, can you do with the NAHASDA dollars as quickly and as you've been responsive to the elders and stuff with the travel dollars?
I think we can. The only difference would be if it was with the NAHASDA money, we would have to do an environmental to spend the money. But it's not a full-blown environmental, it's a partial environmental that they can do in one day.
They can do in one day. Has that been your experience, that they've been doing them in one day?
Yes, they've done them for the Housing Authority on Section 8 in one day.
Okay. Did you spend the $1.75 million last year?
Yes, we did.
And they've asked for $100,000. Do you see any slow up of services to the people doing it that way?
I think with the NAHASDA money can be reallocated to the different programs, so that shouldn't be a problem for, and it'd have to be approved by administration to add more money to that program. That's my opinion.
Kelly, apparently, you're saying they've got 11 million, but is under housing rehabilitation construction 644 and 744, are they not proper uses of the emergency, minor emergency?
I believe that could be used for the minor emergency based on what Marvin reported to us earlier this week. Marvin is here, he's nodding his head.
Okay.
And I know that we had the discussion about the environmentals and whether or not that would hold up the process. And I think the consensus based on what I've heard is that yes, you do have to do some environmental, but it's not as in-depth and can be done quicker. The other part of the discussion earlier was the fact that we've got 3 housing plans on the table, and I guess the way I look at it is if those funds can be used for these types of minor emergencies and can meet the need, we should focus on utilizing those funds first, which is how it's proposed in this budget.
And I don't disagree, other than they've told us that they've already got 200 and some people that are on the rehab list that will utilize the $11 million. And they've got 200 people on a waiting list for emergency, minor emergency right now. And we've not had a waiting list on minor emergency before. And so I'm a little bit concerned as to, even though you can transfer the $11 million over to take care of one program, then you're making the other side short.
I'm not familiar with those statistics. That's probably something that David or Marvin.
Is that correct?
I don't know of a waiting list of 200 people on either program.
They just reported it in the last committee meeting.
We're currently going over the waiting list. We're updating the 800 applicants on the list. We're using the point system. And we're taking people that scored 100 points or better and getting them ready for the rehab. I'm not sure of the waiting list.
Okay. I'm done for a minute.
Okay. Ms. Fishing-Ball.
Can I ask a question?
Pardon?
Can I ask a question?
Oh, you raised your hand earlier. I'm sorry. Dr. Cobb.
I don't have anything.
Mr. Hoskett.
With respect to the environmental, is it the case that if you do an environmental, I assume you're saying you can get to it within a day?
Well, that's depending on the workload of the environmental department too.
At most a day, that would be the quickest turnaround. If the environmental discloses a hazard, isn't it true that you then have to remediate the hazard depending on what the hazard is?
If we're going to do any ground disturbing activities, then yeah, we have to do the full-blown activity, which is a 30-day minimum.
Or paint disturbing activities that could reveal lead?
Yes, if we're going to spend the HOSDA monies and there's lead-based paint, yes.
Wouldn't that follow that there would be considerable delay if they disclose those sorts of hazards as a result of that environmental?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Fulbright.
What is the maximum amount of money that can be spent on remodeling one home?
$30,000. 15. That's with labor and all. 15,000 if it's materials only, self-help.
What is it? You said 15,000,
Materials only.
and it was with self-help, or they?
Yes, ma'am. That's if the participant is doing the work themselves.
But what if they're not?
30,000. And that's us furnishing the labor or contract.
Like the person's disabled?
Ms. Thornton.
David, now, the way I understood you have no one waiting for rehab.
We do have people that are in the process of rehab for 2006 money. They're either out for contract, out for bid with the procurement department, or our force accountants do them.
And you have no one waiting for emergency. You get all those right there.
Well, I'm not sure how many have applied. I'm not sure. I just have to get back with you on that.
Thank you.
Mr. Buzzer.
Now, I have some reservations about this. I tend to want to spend the federal dollars first. But I'm not sure about the environmental. That's what concerns me. Because what had happened over the water and sewer program, when we took over the environmentals on that, it really slowed us down because you can't get those things turned around. Now, I see we're showing 100,000 in here, but I really think that it certainly wouldn't hurt us to go up to 250,000 on something like this. Because if you get people in that need an environmental, you're not going to get it back in 30 days. I can guarantee you that. I've already been through that. And I don't know, and maybe you can answer me this, have you done environmental before at the Cherokee Nation?
Oh, yeah.
Have you did the exceptions here, is what I'm asking.
Yes, we have.
And did you get those turned around within a day?
I take that back, Harley. We done them at the Housing Authority, and yes, we did on Section 8.
That's my comment.
Okay. Mr. Baker.
I've spoken. I'll speak after Ms. Fulbright.
Well, I had Ms. Jordan first.
Oh, okay. Yeah, put me at the end.
I just want to make sure that I understand. The minor emergency repair, there's a $5,000 limit. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
But if we put it under the NAHASDA funding, we're going to move it to a $35,000 limit?
No, we're going to leave it. I think we were planning on leaving it at 5,000. Using the same policy.
Use the same policy but put it under NAHASDA.
Yes, ma'am.
And if we go out and it's emergency and we find lead-based paint, where does it go then?
Then it has to go back for the full-blown environmental, which is a minimum of 30 days with a paint risk assessment done, and then we have to address the lead-based paint before we do anything.
Okay, now, David, to your knowledge, is the minor emergency repair mostly working on prior 78 homes or newer?
Well, that's a hard question. I just have to do some research, but majority of them are the older homes.
So we could find lead-based paint in a lot of them.
Possibly.
But if we stayed under minor emergency repair, we don't do the environmental, we could go ahead and fix the problem and motor on.
That's correct.
And 78 is kind of the magic number, isn't it?
Pre-78.
You're finished? Okay, Ms. Fulbright.
If I recall, when Sharon was here, she gave us a handout and said there was 800 houses on the rehab waiting list, and it was approximately a 3-year wait already. If we use all the Nahasa funds instead of the other, will that slow that up even more?
There's 800, I'm not sure, I think something, I'm not sure what happened there, but there are 800 applicants that we have now, and we take applications on a daily basis. We're going back through our waiting list, we're scoring them on our point system. We have plenty of them to host them on.
Okay. Does that answer your question? Mr. Sutherland?
When you do the environmental, is that prior to any award of any materials, or is that just if the Cherokee Nation is going to do the work?
We go out and do a cost estimate on the house first to know what type of environmental we're going to use before we spend any money on it. The cost of the federal money, we have to have an environmental.
So if I'm going to do the work myself, and you tell me that you've got lead-based paint, then the Cherokee Nation cleans it up? Or
Yes, Cherokee Nation. And we have to address the lead-based paint first before we do anything.
And just to follow up if I may. So in the other program, even though we don't require that, then what's the risk there that we're going into homes and not checking for lead-based paint, and then we're just doing the repairs and that's not being done?
Well, our guys are all certified in lead-based paint, and they look for deteriorated paint when they go out to do the initial inspection. So if there's a question, they bring it to our attention.
So under this other program, though, there were opportunities for us to encounter lead-based paint in a home, and we didn't address it like we normally would under the HOSTA funds.
There is that possibility.
Okay. Does that answer your question? Chris?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Ms. Watts?
I'm going to throw this out. It is that time. I know that we have a lot of monthly meetings coming up where we have opportunities to amend all this. Spent considerable time on it. Everybody's answered our questions. I'd like to make a motion that we pass this budget as amended the past 4 days to full council here in 5 minutes, like 10, whatever it is, and pass the 2007-2008 budget, knowing we're going to amend it at the next meeting.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, remember we have less than 5 minutes for discussion. Mr. Baker?
Well, now, if we run 20 minutes late, we can still have our meeting.
Right.
I mean, just because we set it at 2 doesn't mean it's going to start at 2.
Yeah. Okay.
And, I mean, we're close. We've got 2 more tabs after the one that we're going through. And I think that this budget is way too important just to shut off right this second. And obviously, I was hoping to at least make a motion on giving more than $100,000 in emergency housing repair, knowing that they have utilized the money every year and have probably overspent the money. And it's an important program, and you say, okay, we can get an environmental in 1 day, but 1 day is 1 day too many. If it's an elder that doesn't have heat in the winter, or it's an elder that doesn't have air conditioning in the summer, and you've had hundreds of those, haven't you?
Then make a friendly amendment. We have...
Okay. I make a friendly amendment that we add a minimum of $200,000 to that line. Start them off with $300,000. We've always started off with 5. and come back, and last year it grew up to 1.75.
I will accept 200,000 as long as the administration looks at our federal funds first.
And I would agree with that.
All right.
Okay. Now, a second friendly amendment that we hadn't even talked about, but I want to talk about it. Housing Authority's not here. I wish they were. But they used to have this emergency housing. They get an elder that has one of their homes, and they call in and say, my air conditioner's not working, or my heater's not working. Housing Authority sends somebody out, and their trucks are stocked. They've got thermostats, they've got thermocouplings, they've got all these things. But all they can do right now is go out and assess it. And then they've got to go back to the client and say, we don't have any money for minor emergencies or for rehab or for anything like that. And if you'll sign a contract that you'll pay us $10 a month for the next few months. Anyway, long story short, I would like to add $100,000 to the Housing Authority so that they can do these minor emergencies while they're out there and just fix these people instead of having to come back and go through all this paperwork.
Mr. Chair, I respectfully decline in anticipation of the special, or the resources, or the tribal services, community services meeting where we will discuss the housing plan. And the reason why is I'm not sending anything else back to the Housing Authority where I have no real ability to oversight without further thought. So I would appreciate more information on that particular program before that meeting.
And I really thought David Sutherland would be here where he could explain it.
I'm happy to consider that in the tribal services, community services when we discuss the Indian housing plan. But I will not advocate putting anything back into the Housing Authority at this time.
Okay. Ms. Kester.
This is just informational. It's my understanding that at least right now, Housing Authority does have some discretionary funds that they could utilize to meet some of that type of need. They have an account called Proceeds of Sale, and just want to let the body know that there may be funds available at the Housing Authority for that type of emergency.
Okay. Any other? Ms. Fishing-Hall.
I guess we're wrapping up, but I was just going to request that everybody show the courtesy of let's just fill these last 2 pages so we can wrap all this up. Just, instead of breaking early, taking an hour to do it, did at 3 o'clock, because he said it wouldn't matter if we start the meeting an hour later. So I was just asking everybody to show that courtesy and let's take it.
Let's hear from the Speaker, Ms. Fraley.
We can actually go into session, make a motion, go into the committee as a whole, and then rise and report, and we can continue discussions, rise and report, and then approve it all at the same time.
Ms. Jordan.
I realize this is not everybody's first rodeo in this matter, but it is mine. And it's helping me, it's really helping me to go through each one of these as we've been going through them with Mr. Evans and get an understanding of what each of these areas are responsible for. So I would ask that we continue on through this process to the end. We are getting ready to do something with $400 million of the people's money.
Okay, what the chair proposes is that the next 2 items are items that we actually cannot change without changing the housing program, so we cannot amend their budget. But I would ask for Doug to go through them briefly, and then we will come back and vote on the motion if that's agreeable.
Minutes.
Okay. Doug. What's the housing?
Okay.
2 housing authorities.
Okay. The Housing Authority.
Point of order, didn't we have carry one motion on the floor?
And the chair asked for courtesy.
Yes, I asked that he be allowed to do this before we vote on the motion.
The Housing Authority budget out of the IHP, you can see there's about a $5 million, $5.5 million decrease compared to last year. This next slide shows you it's in a little bit different fashion because now we're going to follow the color coordination. The yellow is the 07 budget. The 07 budget, as you can see, was largely utilizing the 06 IHP funds and the 05 IHP funds. The '08 budget, as you can see, has predominantly the '07 IHP. One point of interest here, as you can obviously see, is that the '08 IHP is not in here yet. So, this is a significant block grant that will be coming before you in the committee process that will be greatly affecting all these charts. The next chart shows you breakout between Housing Authority and Cherokee Nation as far as the funding goes. And the next is just that in a tabular form. Page 153, you can obviously review it if you haven't already, but it shows where the Cherokee Nation's groups and departments are utilizing the IHP funding. And again, the decrease here as a whole, keep in mind we don't have the '08 IHP funds in here yet. Okay, so last tab, I don't have any chart, it's the pass-through, the Delaware Tribe pass-through. It's relatively the same level as it was in '07, and it just began in '07. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Council, for allowing me the opportunity to review the Cherokee Nation budget. I view that as an honor.
Certainly appreciate all your work that went into this. Prepare.
I did have one question about Delaware Housing.
Okay.
You say it's a pass-through. Do we receive any funds for being the pass-through? Because I know they approached a number of tribes and they were willing to pay to keep their money coming through.
We retain a small amount in evaluation compliance. I believe it's around $23,000. If you look back under government resources, it's $23,394 for specifically for the Delaware.
Page 143C. You're on. Okay.
So now we have the motion to approve the budget as amended with the addition of the $200,000 for emergency housing. Is there any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Then, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Stay in your seat.
All in favor say aye. Aye. Okay.
Oh, we did it here.
We are adjourned. And now we know.
Punishment here, dog.